Let me make sure I got my speaker jamming. Come on, speaker. Okay, I think it's connected. Nope, it ain't connected. Y'all ain't gonna be able to hear it if I don't connect it. Sorry, y'all. I usually have this done before now. All right, let's see if this plays and y'all can hear it.
Did you know God talked about a holiday that someday all nations will celebrate together? Your knee-jerk reaction might be to guess either Christmas or Easter, but it is none other than the Jewish festival of Sukkot, also known as the Feast of Tabernacles or the Feast of Booths. Somewhere between a telephone booth and your favorite corner booth at a local restaurant, but we'll get into that later. So what exactly is Sukkot? For starters, it's the last of the three pilgrimage feasts, Passover and Shavuot being the other two earlier in the year. For these feasts, the Jewish people travel on a pilgrimage to Jerusalem whenever possible to celebrate all together. But is Sukkot talked about in the Bible? The answer is yes. In Leviticus 23, God commanded Moses, "Speak to the people of Israel, saying, on the 15th day of the 7th month, and for 7 days is the Feast of Booths. When you have gathered the produce of the land, you shall celebrate the feast of the Lord. It is a statute forever throughout your generations. You shall dwell in booths for 7 days, that your generations may know that I made the people of Israel dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God." The whole purpose behind this holiday is to remember how God brought them out of slavery and into freedom while providing for them all along the way. And these are reasons to celebrate. The telltale sign that the holiday is underway are the Sukkot, booths, tabernacles that one can spot outside Jewish homes for the whole week. They are like decorated forts on their balcony or in the yard. Think camping. Well, it's more like glamping. People traditionally decorate them with harvest fruits, lights, and lots of color. It's a family affair and something that kids look forward to for months. Then they dwell in their sukkah for 7 days, just as the Lord commanded, to remember their time in the wilderness. And it gets even better. It wasn't exclusive for only the people of Israel to celebrate. This is something God expanded the camp from just his chosen people to all people. God encouraged Moses to gather all men, women, children, along with the foreigners of their land, so they could learn to fear the Lord. Even way back then, God was training Israel to be a light to the nations. He desired to dwell with them during the Feast of Tabernacles, and hundreds of years later, he sent his son Emmanuel, which means God with us, to dwell with us forever. In the book of Revelation, we look forward to the somewhat constant Sukkot celebration, when God will once again dwell on earth with us. Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men. He will dwell with them. They shall be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. This powerful image of the sukkah, or tabernacle, serves to commemorate God's dwelling among his chosen people in the wilderness. It's also a beautiful invitation to all of us to dwell with him forever. And now that's something we're celebrating together.
All right, so Sukkot, if I can make this thing advance. Oh, doggone it. It started on the 15th day of the Jewish calendar, but it takes 7 days to celebrate it, but it starts on the 15th day. So just to keep everybody sort of, okay, where are we at in the list? We've gone through Rosh Hashanah, we've gone through Yom Kippur, as it's more accurately pronounced, and now we're at Sukkot. There are 7 days that it's celebrated, but there is an eighth day, which is very important. We're always structured from a biblical standpoint. We always think about 7 days, right? The eighth day is like the completed day of rest. It's like the day of rest that never ends. So if you hear somebody talk about the eighth day, don't be like, oh, are you some kind of new branch of Christian or something? No, the eighth day is the biblical representation of the forever Sabbath. The day never ends. The Sabbath never ends. It's eternity. That's the imagery that we see from it. And so Sukkot is coming. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk, first of all, about where it came from. And then we're going to dive right into the story of Jesus. I asked Kelly this the other day as we were talking about this week preparing. And I said, hey, I've noticed something. I'm interested if anybody else has ever noticed this. When in the Bible, piece of trivia, Albert, just whenever you're at one of them dinner parties you're at, and you got all them people around them, all them highfalutin people, I want you to ask this trivia question. Ask them, say, when in the Bible is Jesus always at Jerusalem? What's going on? Nope. Every time we see Jesus in Jerusalem, why is he there? He's always in Jerusalem for a feast. Every time in the Bible. Have you ever thought about that? See, that's a good trivia question, Albert. That's one you can stop everybody with. But now, that to me was fascinating to think about for just a second. Every time in the New Testament we see Jesus in Jerusalem, he is there because of a feast. And I thought, man, that's it. Why? I've never connected all those dots. And tonight we're going to connect the dot of that I think will be interesting. So Leviticus 23. Say, boy, he's Southern Baptist. Yeah. So he was there because they was having chicken day, right? Yeah, I'm sure that's the reason Jesus was there. He knew it was chicken day. Chicken livers. Yeah, Jesus wouldn't eat chicken livers. On the fifth day in Leviticus chapter 23, we actually see the orientation, the beginning of Sukkot. What's happening in Leviticus? Let's not take anything for granted. And I need y'all to say that. If at some point you go, hey, step back there, man. You went too far too fast. Tell me why. You leapfrog me there. Y'all slow me down and say, because if you feel that way, I guarantee you somebody else feels that way, okay? They're in the wilderness. They have been in the wilderness for more than a year. And God is retraining them on what it should look like, what their lives should look like. He is reframing them after 430 years of being in Egypt as slaves, living among other gods. And he is training them how to worship him. So in Leviticus 23, he says, why, by the way, y'all, if we're Jewish people, if we're ancient Jews, if Jesus isn't back yet, and we're ancient Jews, and we're living back in 300 BC, why do we celebrate the feast? Why are they important to us as a Jewish people? He told us to, but for what reason? Why did he tell us to? What does it help us do? To not forget. Man, the kids are on tonight. To not forget. The reason God gave us the feast is to remind us of where we came from, what God has done, and what we should expect. Because the spring feast, let's talk about that real quick. We got 7 predominant feasts. The spring feasts are feasts that have already, of things that have what? Things that have already occurred. The fall feasts are what? Prophetic. They are looking forward into what is going to happen. And Tabernacles is a representation of the coming of Jesus to dwell with us. Yes, Yahweh was recognized as, still as the God of the Hebrews because Moses knew about him, right? There was a semblance of God left, but we do not know how strong it was. We do know that they had been worshiping other Egyptian gods because why else would God need to tear down the Egyptian gods if he didn't need to extract them from those people, from the Hebrew people? But we know that Yahweh was a known Elohim, a known spiritual being in Hebrew, but Jesus, obviously, there's no concept in their mind at that point. They just know that God is a God that has a father and there's a spirit. We don't really know much about the Son yet at that point in Leviticus, if that makes sense. Okay? So here we are in Leviticus, living out in the desert. It's been over a year with 1 million people and all of their animals living out in the desert in tents. Okay? And on the 15th day of the 7th month, God told Moses, this is what you are to celebrate. This shall be the feast of Sukkot, and the booths. For 7 days, you're going to celebrate this festival from this point forward. On the first day, there shall be a holy assembly, and you must not do any regular work. What does that sound like? A Sabbath. For 7 days, you must present an offering made by fire to Yahweh. On the 8th day, it shall be a holy assembly. You see the 8 days? On the 8th day, it's going to be a holy assembly for you, and you shall present another offering. So during each one of these days of 7 days, and I'm going to show you the animals they would sacrifice and the quantity, and then they would get to the 8th day and they would sacrifice one more time, one bull. One bull. Now, I find that interesting personally. It's a burnt offering, a sin offering. It's a sin offering. Yes, it's sin. So they would offer these sacrifices, and on the first day of this Sukkot festival, you're supposed to take this first fruit of a majestic tree. The closest thing to a majestic tree, and I'm going to show you one here in just a minute, is called an etrog. I've never held one, but it looks like a lemon. It's like an ugly lemon. Y'all ever been to the grocery store and they got them ugly fruits? They're all bumpy on the outside. That's what it looks like, is an ugly fruit, but it's a lemon looking thing. And that's called an etrog. And so that's what everybody uses today. And then you're supposed to take branches of palm trees and branches of leafage tree and of a Brooks poplar tree, and you shall, and this is a key word, rejoice before Yahweh your God for 7 days. Now, if you were to characterize the fall festivals of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, how would you characterize those from how are you supposed to feel? Sad, awful, guilty, right? But Tabernacles, you're supposed to rejoice. Y'all, today, in 7 days in Jerusalem, they getting ready to have a party in 7 days, y'all. I'm talking about they are fixing to have seven. We don't really party anymore. Everybody in this room, I can pretty much look across at y'all, and I can tell y'all we have forgot how to party. Our cups are clear now. I mean, we drink water. I mean, this is whenever they talk about party on the Feast of Tabernacles. I mean, they are dancing, they are eating, they are drinking wine, they are having a good time. They have been through Rosh Hashanah, they have been through Yom Kippur, and it is get down and boogie day. And for 7 days, they're going to do this. You must live in these booths for 7 days. Not only you, but all the natives in Israel, so that generations may know that I made the Israelite lives in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I am Yahweh, your God. So the Israelites, they're aliens, they're sojourners. Everybody participates in the Feast of Booths in Jerusalem. That's a good time. That'd be a good party to go to, wouldn't it? That'd be a good time to go visit Jerusalem. That'd be a really good time to go visit. Celebrate the Feast of Booths in Deuteronomy chapter 16 for yourselves 7 days from your threshing floor and from your press, and you shall rejoice at your feast. There's rejoice again. You and your sons and your daughters and your slave woman and the Levite and the alien and the orphan, everybody. You see that? He just said everybody gets to participate in this. So somebody says to you, well, this whole Jesus thing, it's for the Jews. No, right here in the Torah, in Deuteronomy, from the very beginning, he said everybody gets to celebrate in the Feast of Tabernacles, the ingathering, the indwelling. Now, here's what's neat about the Feast of Ingathering. This is a time not only of rejoicing just because of what God has done, that he has saved you from Egypt, but it is a celebration because this is the time that all the harvest is coming in, y'all, in Israel. This is when the abundance of the harvest, the pomegranates, the dates, the figs, the grapes are like on fire right now, the olives. This is when everything comes in. And so this is like truly a feast. I mean, this is the ingathering of the fruits of what God has provided rain for. And that's important, water. Each person shall give as he is able. This is according to the blessing of your God, Yahweh, that he has given to you. You see, you're sharing. This is a time, and it would not be uncommon if we were in Jerusalem that James and Marie's booth, they would say, come over, we're slaughtering a sheep this week. We've got too many sheep or whatever, and we're going to share with y'all. But in their case, they got 18 eggs. They got 4 dozen eggs. We're going to have boiled eggs like Cool Hand Luke at Marie and James for the Festival of Sukkot. That's how we're going to eat. And then somebody else might have something else, and we might go from booth to booth to celebrate. And literally, y'all, they build these booths outside their houses. And they deliberately leave on top of the booth the palm branches and the knitting to where they can look up through the sky to see the stars. They deliberately do that because it's a reminder to them over and over of that God redeemed us from slavery, just like our ancestors, and he wants us to remember that. And so they live, they eat, they have fun, just like the lady said. They glamp almost in these things. They have these tents even set up. Look in Deuteronomy 31. Then Moses commanded them and said, at the end of 7 years, in the time of the year for canceling debts, during the Feast of Booths. In ancient Jewish culture, what would happen is that if came along and Rich owed me money and he indebted himself to me, that at the end of that 7 years, it's, man, you're free to go. You don't owe me nothing else. Go back to work. Go back to your home. Get your land. You're free to go. Well, no, I still owe you $20. Nope, it's done. You get on. That'd be good, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be good? So here we go. And then in Zechariah. Now, the book of Zechariah, if you've not studied it, the book of Zechariah is like the Old Testament version of Revelation. Did you know that? If you're reading Revelation, you need to be reading Zechariah because it's one foretelling of the next. And in the book of Zechariah, it says, and then every survivor, just so for the context, before verse 16 is whenever all heaven is broke loose on earth. Some people say all hell's broke loose. No, you ain't seen nothing until heaven breaks loose, because the blood is going to fill the valley whenever he comes back. And every survivor from all those goyim, the nations, coming against Jerusalem will go up year after year to worship King Jesus, Yahweh of hosts. For those of you who have not been here, we did a whole Bible study on what's called the Divine Council. And the Divine Council is the concept that Yahweh, Elohim, has a host of other spiritual beings around him in the Bible. It talks about this. And those Yahweh, he is the Elohim of Elohim. He is the King of Kings. He is the Yahweh of all the hosts that are around him. And that's not me and you dying and going to heaven. This is a host that has been in heaven around him since eternity's existence. And Yahweh of hosts, and celebrate what? The Feast of Booths. So you think the Feast of Booths is important for us to know as Gentiles even? Absolutely. Even as Gentiles, we should know this feast because it is an exact replication of what will occur at the time of Revelation. And what did we say when we studied Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah? Whenever we studied those, the Feast of Trumpets, what is it many people believe about the Feast of Trumpets will be the timing of what? The coming of the Messiah again, Mashiach, coming back. Isn't that interesting? And the Tabernacles means to dwell with us. I mean, y'all, we can't, it's like a, do you real, I look at my Bible and I see this collection, I see a library. I don't see a book anymore. I see a library in my hands of 66 books, a library of 66 books that is telling me about where we have come from and where we are going to. And we have to, in this case, we get to pay attention. And God tells us, guess what? During the time of Revelation, there is going to be the celebration of the Feast of Tabernacles that all of you will get to participate in. All the survivors. Who are the survivors? They're called the remnant. The remnant are the survivors. The remnant, those that are left over. The ones that are called by God, that are left over. Those are the remnant. And we get to celebrate. And it's a time of rejoicing, right? You see this here. You should, even though it's a time of hardship that they're experiencing, that Zechariah is actually prophesying, this Feast of Booths is supposed to be a time of rejoicing. Rejoicing for what reason? Because they survived. Because God is finally, Yahweh has finally come back and he is here and showing himself. And so we keep going. And all the assembly of those who had returned from captivity made booths in the book of Nehemiah and lived in those booths. For from the days of Joshua, the son of Nun, to that day, the people of Israel had not done so. They forgot about it. If you don't recall, what happened in Jewish history is they became captive by Babylon. Persia, Babylon, there was 5 kingdoms essentially that ruled over them. And as they ruled over them, what happened is they began to forget their heritage. This is after Egypt, y'all. And they begin to forget what God has done. And in Ezra and Nehemiah are sister and companion books, right? They're like one and the same, is how you should almost read them. And Ezra and Nehemiah, what happens is they come back to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple. Remember, if you read the book of Ezra, it says they were sad because the temple wasn't quite as grand as the one Solomon built. And it said the people cried when they set the cornerstones. And they cried about that the temple wasn't as grand. And what Ezra did, the priest Ezra stood up and he read the entire Torah to them. And it said the people cried over it and wept because it had not been read to them for so long. And in Nehemiah, he says, out of this, they then decided we must celebrate the Feast of Booths. And so they celebrate that. And there was very great rejoicing. And day by day, from the first day to the last day, he read from the book of the law of God. They kept the feast 7 days. And on the 8th day, there was a solemn assembly according to the rules from the book of Leviticus, is what we would read. Isn't that cool? All throughout our Bible, it's connected to one another. Yes. Yes, they do. Yes. It's typically done with family in the booth. It is. All right, so let's keep going. What does the sacrifice look like? On the first day, they sacrificed 13 bulls, 2 rams, 14 lambs, and 1 goat on the first day. As a nation in old times, this is when the temple actually existed. Thank you, Foster, for saying that. Do they sacrifice animals today? No. So this is at the time that the temple existed or the tabernacle existed in the wilderness. They sacrificed these animals the first day. And then every day after that, they would gradually step down the number of animals they were sacrificing until they had sacrificed a total of this over the 7 days, 70 animals over those 7 days. That is a lot of animals, y'all. Can you imagine how much? Yeah, we don't quite grasp how big the sacrificial system was. It was a bloody mess. If you've never gutted and cleaned animals, you don't realize how big 13 bulls being gutted. That is a lot of blood. Two rams. I mean, you just these other animals alone. It's a phenomenal amount of sacrifice, and this is all being done out of a sacrificial system to God. So, what do the booths look like today? They build the booths out of all kind of things. They build them. They're supposed to build them out of rickety materials, what we call rickety. I don't know how do you spell rickety, but we build it out of rickety material, and on purpose because it was like they were traveling through the wilderness, right? And that so they would just you see here they would lay stuff up over the top again so you could see through. Now some people they go straight up glamping sukkah. They got the sukkah with the tent and all the stuff hanging off the side. There's actually a sukkah in the Israeli museum that existed in Germany during the time of the Nazis that they snuck out of Germany, that some Jews that lived in Germany were able to sneak out. And it had murals that were painted from an artist in Jerusalem that had been sent to Germany. And they've maintained those murals on the sukkah in the now Israelis museum. And you can actually, it's behind glass and you can go see the whole sukkah that they had during the time of the Nazis. Isn't that wonderful? That to me is absolutely amazing and wonderful to think about. Yes. Almost, almost. It's kind of like Hanukkah and all that. Yeah. Oh yeah. If the wealthier families might really go all out, and then basic country families like us, they might come around and just have poles sticking up, or to be honest, what we would do, them first up tents that you have the little that you pull apart. That is what we'd make a sukkah out of today. If we were going to redneck it up, we'd take that. You'd take a old paint sheet that had holes in it, and you throw that paint sheet over the top of it so you can see up to the top of it. And so the greatest. Go ahead, Rick. Yes. They are gutting it and then spreading its entrails out to see what they can understand about what God may be saying to them through, for instance, the liver. And then what they would then do is burn, they would incinerate everything except for the blood. The blood would be drained kosher. They would cut the vein in the neck to drain the blood from the animal. And then they would use the blood as part of the sacrificial system, but everything else gets incinerated except for the choice peat. It changes as we move toward the Temple of Herod. Um, the best butchers in Jerusalem during the Temple of Herod, guess who they were? The priest. Guess where you get the best meat from? The priest. They would take choice cuts of meat at the Temple of Herod and actually sell them to eat. But otherwise, they would actually incinerate the animal. Okay? And it was the reason it was incinerated is to be a pleasing aroma to Elohim, to God, is what it was to signify. That's a good question. So sukkah, just so you know, the word sukkah, this chart is from the Bible software called Logos, and it charts everywhere that a word is used to give you a density of word patterns. Look at where the word sukkah is most used in the whole of the Bible, in the Psalms. Isn't that neat? I thought that was really 53 times in the Bible is you find the word sukkah in the Old Testament in this case because I was doing a search on the Hebrew word. You find that Hebrew word. That's correct. That is Zechariah and Malachi. All right. So if you go to Amazon today, go there tonight, 2 day shipping, Prime. You can get your sukkah supplies, literally. You can get the palm branches that are waved And you can get your etrog sent to you just in time for the celebration of Sukkot. Tonight, you can do that. So, and you can buy them off Amazon. Isn't that crazy? But that's how big the festival is. It's huge, y'all. I'm talking about this is a massive. This in the Bible, if they say in the Bible, if you ever see the word and they celebrated the feast, this is the feast. If you go to the university in the state of Alabama, where have you gone? Alabama, right? Nobody has to ask. I don't even watch football. But you say the university, and everybody goes, oh, it's Alabama. If you say the feast in Jerusalem, they go, oh, he's talking about tabernacle. Look at, okay? So there's three things that they primarily are looking. Yeah. Oh, you can buy whole decoration kits, like to go the walls of it and stuff. It's crazy. Yeah, of course it's on there. Yeah, that's how westernized we are. But yet we keep trying to read the Bible from that vantage point. Does that make sense? And it's hurting us. So here we go. There are three primary things that happen um, in Sukkot. Um, the priest would walk outside the temple complex, let's say about the time of Jesus, okay? So I want to put you in the frame of mind. We're at the time of Jesus, we're at Herod's great temple. Herod the Great's remade the temple. And the priest would walk out the eastern gate and they would face the sun and they would turn around and they would say, no, we are facing the temple. We're not worshiping the sun. And that's one thing they would do. The next thing they would do is they would have the menorahs and they would light. There's four inside the temple complex. Let's pull up an image. I should have had this ready, but let's do this live real quick. Herod's temple images. Okay, so this is the temple that Herod the Great had remade, right? This is a replica of what the temple looked like. And you're seeing an image of the central courtyard, and you're seeing the image of the actual sanctuary area here. And then over around here are the colonnades that existed outside of that temple area. Okay? The actual sacrificial system happened just within these walls right here where that finger is. Okay? Yes, you would go inside this large structure here is the Holy of Holies. So inside what you're not seeing here and what is not represented is there were four 75-foot tall, 7.5 stories, just to give you a perspective. There were four 75-foot tall menorahs there that contained 10 gallons of olive oil each. And that young men would take great pleasure in climbing ladders to fill them with virgin olive oil. And the wicks of these giant lanterns on top of these 75-foot towers would be made from the garments of the priest. And these 75-foot towers at the time of the Feast of Tabernacles would be burning at night. And documents talk about how majestic and how you could see from all over the Mount of Olives these giant towers shimmering at night of these olive oil burning lamps standing in the towers in the temple complex and reflecting off of. Can you imagine? Because this was inlaid with gold. Can you imagine those menorahs just just that light fall there, getting a little bit. The weather's not much different than Alabama and Jerusalem right now. It's a little bit higher, so they got a little bit cooler weather at night. But can you imagine the heat coming off of those lanterns and everything that's going on? I mean, the city has swelled to over it's about a 400 acre it's about 400 acres total at this time, the city of Jerusalem is. And it is now swollen to over 1 million people almost celebrating the Feast of Tabernacle. And everybody gathering inside of this complex. The sacrificial system. They, they would celebrate outside the city walls or in the city. If you were with family, you would have structures inside the cities, down the streets, and all that. But they would have, there was all kind of ceremonies that were going on. So, for instance, as they would go down to get water, um, let me go back here. So, one of the things, for instance, right here, what would happen is the background image that you see is the leftovers of the pool of Siloam, the pool of Siloam. The pool of Siloam is where they would walk, the priest would walk. And when I say he would walk, I mean he would walk for acres down to this pool from the temple complex. Big steps, and crowds would follow him down the steps during the Feast of Tabernacle. And he would get to the bottom of the Feast of Tabernacle, to the bottom, to the pool of Siloam, which was from the time of Hezekiah, that was built so that the city could be fortified and withstand the siege that was happening. And they would dip, the priest would dip a golden pitcher into that, and they would dance and they would sing because they were rejoicing, and they would walk back up to the temple complex, and then they would pour a drink offering, a libation offering for God out of the pool of Siloam, the pool of peace. And he would pour that, okay? Isn't that cool? And he would walk up those steps. Everybody, as he walked up certain steps, they were called the Psalms of Ascension from our book of Psalms, from our Psalms. And they would sing at each step a particular psalm. Each step, literally each step that he took. Isn't this wonderful? No, it wasn't like we were jogging. And they would sing the Hallel, and they would sing, and it would be beautiful. Y'all, this is like, we don't have parties like this at all. Yes, yes, but caroling like with vigor. you know, okay, so here's what I want to do. We're going to transfer over, and we're going to spend our last few minutes here, and we're going to go to John 7. And I want you to read this now, and I want you to understand where Jesus is. Remember when Jesus visited Jerusalem? During what times? During the feast. This is the Feast of Tabernacle that we're about to read. This should blow your mind as we read this now. You should be reading this going, okay, there's a party going on, 7, all these people are coming, all these animals being sacrificed, the menorah lights are lit, there's 1,000,000 people in the city, the booths are there, people are waving palm branches, they've got etrogs, everybody's partying and singing. And after these things, Jesus was going about in Galilee. That's where he was from, right? That's where Jesus lived. He's from Deetsville, from Galilee. And for he did not want to go about in Judea. Why? Because Herod was after him. Herod wanted to kill him. So he wasn't hanging out in Judea because there was a warrant for his arrest. Kelly was telling me there was a football coach. What was his name? Fulmer? What's his name? Fulmer. He couldn't come in Alabama for a while. Same thing. Jesus couldn't go to Judea because he'd get arrested. All right, same principle. And because, yes, the football teams weren't no good. Because the Jews were seeking to kill him in Judea. Now, the feast of the Jews, which feast? The Feast of Tabernacles was near. How long does it take you to get from Galilee to Jerusalem? Walking. 3 or 4 days if you hoofing it. Because whenever we walk down from Galilee, we have to cut down the Sea of Galilee. We got to dodge Samaria because them doggone Samaritans. We got to dodge Samaria, so we cross this Jordan River. Then we run down the east side of the Jordan River, and we get down to Jericho, and we cut back across because we got out of the bad part. And we cut back across, and then we got to make our way up 2,500 feet to Jerusalem. 3 to 4 days if you're hoofing it with family. You're dragging a goat with you. All right? And so Jesus says, so his brothers said to him, hey, depart from here and go to Judea so that your disciples can see works that you are doing. This is his brothers, y'all. His half brothers. For no one does anything in secret, and yet he himself desires to be publicly recognized. If you're really this Messiah, you say you are, Jesus, little big brother Jesus, if you're doing these things, reveal yourself to the whole world, to the cosmos, to everybody. For not even his own brothers believed in him. Doggone it. Can you imagine what that felt like? I can. I've got a sister. She don't think bad of me. I don't reckon. Most of the time. And they sit there and can you imagine what it must? Jesus was human. He knew who he was, but can you imagine? It was like, man. So Jesus said to them, this is him talking to his stepbrothers. My time's not come yet, but your time is always ready. I like that right there. Jesus didn't take no crap. He didn't put up with nothing. I can tell you that. Jesus was we try to make him all lovey dovey all the time. Jesus knew how to get you. He said, your time's already here. The world cannot hate you. Because you ain't doing nothing worth hating, you bunch of losers. But it hates me because I am testifying about it, that its deeds are evil. You mixed into them. They can't tell the difference between your evil self. But me, Jesus, I make them upset because they see holiness. You see that? You go up to the feast. I'm not going this year because my time's not yet completed. And when he had said these things, he remained in Galilee and his brothers took off. 4-day trip. We got to go. Because it's 4-day trip. That means what time? It's on the 15th day of Tishri. So they're leaving like the 10th or 11th day. We're going. You going? Nope, y'all go on. I ain't going with you bunch of sorry no goods. So they take off. But when his brothers had gone up to the feast, then he also went up. I didn't want to be with y'all no how. I didn't want to ride in the car with y'all and listen to you bickering the whole way. Not openly, but it was in secret he went. So y'all, this is in your Bible. How many times y'all read the book of John? And you feel like tonight you're going, I ain't never heard this story. So the Jews were looking for him, Jesus, at the feast, and they were saying, where is Jesus? Where is this Galilean? And there was a lot of grumbling concerning him among the crowd. Why? Because there's a bunch of people there. They're in the temple complex. Remember, he's healed people. He is like on Facebook everywhere. Everybody's paying attention to this Jesus cat. There's a reel of him healing this guy, and there's another reel of him over there making a lame man to walk. Everybody's seen the movies. It must be true. And there was a lot of grumbling concerning him among the crowd. Some were saying, he's a good man. But they were saying, no, he's deceiving the crowds. However, no one was speaking openly about him because they were afraid of the Jews. Huh? Well, we're not sure. You ever like something and you're not sure if somebody else liked it? You're like, well, I'm going to test the waters here and see if they're on the same page I am. I'm going to say just something a little. And if they answer back in the affirmative, then we can have a good conversation about it. But if I tell they don't like it, then I just want to address it with them. Y'all see that? That's what they're doing. Now, when the feast was already half over, how long's the feast? 7 days. 7 days. 8th day is the final thing. Everybody goes home. Time to check out. But now, when the feast was already half over, Jesus went to the temple courts and began to teach. I'm talking about if there's ever a time to be in Jerusalem, Passover and Sukkot, he is right in the middle of the biggest feast of the year, and he's stepping up into the temple courts to begin teaching. Then the Jews were astonished, saying, how does this man possess knowledge? Because he's not been taught. That boy ain't even graduated from Torah school. Remember, because Jesus was what? He was a stonemason, a carpenter. Jesus worked with his hands, which meant that he did not make it through the Talmudim school. He did not make it through formal Pharisee teaching school because he went to work with his daddy, remember? So he was a laborer. How does he know this? So Jesus answered them and said, my teaching is not mine, but it's from the one who sent me. If anyone wants to do his will, Yahweh's will, he will know about my teaching, whether it is from God or if I'm speaking from myself. If anyone really has studied their Torah, because remember, they don't have the New Testament, y'all. If anybody studied their Torah, the Tanakh, the Torah, the Ketuvim, and the Netavim, if anybody has studied that, they'll know that what I'm talking about is coming from him. speaks from himself seeks his own glory. This is like one of the chiastic pieces, okay? The one who speaks from himself seeks his own glory, but the one who seeks the glory of the one who sent him, this one is true, and there is no unrighteousness in him. He's talking about himself. Has not Moses given you the Torah? And none of you carries out the Torah. Why do you seek to kill me? In other words, he calls them out. You guys don't even main. You say you want to follow me, but none or follow Yeshua or Jesus or pardon me Yahweh. You say you follow him, but none of you even follow the law he's giving you. You all are guilty. Verse 20. The crowd replied, "You have a demon. Who is seeking to kill you, you crazy man?" Jesus was one of a few things, and crazy was one of them, they thought. Jesus answered and said to them, "I performed one work, and you all were astonished. Because of this, Moses has given you circumcision. Not that it is from Moses, but from the fathers, Abraham as an example. And you circumcise a man on the Sabbath." He healed this man on the Sabbath, and they were upset at him. That's the work he's talking about. He healed a man on the Sabbath, and they were inflamed by the fact that he would heal on the Sabbath. If a man receives circumcision on the Sabbath because it's his time to be circumcised as a child, so that the law of Moses would not be broken, are you angry with me because I made a whole man well on the Sabbath? What's the problem here? Oh, I'm not supposed to heal anybody, but you can circumcise a boy? You say you follow the law. Whatever. Do not judge according to outward appearance, but judge according to righteous judgment. See, Jesus understood the law in a way that they couldn't comprehend. They were incapable because of the veil that was in front of them, that they had so become accustomed to living by the law. We've got the Midrash, it tells us how to live. All the oral traditions, we have to keep all these laws. That's how we're made right with God. And Jesus was like, "Dadgummit, y'all missed it." Then some of the inhabitants of Jerusalem began to say, "Is this not the one whom they are seeking to kill? And behold, he is speaking openly, and they are saying nothing to him." Millions of people around. Can it be the truth that the rulers truly know that this man is the Christ? Do they know that he is the Mashiach and they are hiding it from us on purpose? What do we remember about the temple guard and the temple priest at this time? What had happened? They were corrupt. They were bought. The office had been bought by Rome. Oh, nobody buys political office. You can trust what we say. Take it. It's not going to hurt you. You hear? That's where they were. Yet we know where this man is from. But the Mashiach, the Christ, whenever he comes, no one knows where he is from. Then Jesus cried out in the temple courts, teaching and saying, "You both know me and you know where I am from. And I have not come from myself, but the one who sent me is true, whom you do not know. I know him because I am from him, and he sent me to you. He sent me for you." So they were seeking to seize him, and no one laid a hand on him because his hour had not yet come. But from the crowd, many believed in him and were saying, "Whenever the Mashiach comes, he will not perform more signs than this man has done, will he?" Regardless of what the rulers tell us, our hearts know. Just from being in synagogue, our hearts know this is him. This is who we've been waiting for, even though the rulers won't say it. The Pharisees heard the crowd murmuring these things about him. And the chief priest, remember, he's not a Levitical priest. The Pharisees sent officers in order to take him into custody. Then Jesus said, "Yet a little time I am with you, and I am going to the one who sent me, Yahweh. You will seek me and will not find me, and where I am you cannot come." Well, what do you mean I can't? I know what he's saying now. I know what the Pharisees are standing by. You right there, you're saying you came from God. Blasphemy. And I can't go there? You don't know how I live. I'm a Pharisee. You have no idea. I am righteousness, is what Greeks is he? What is this saying that he said, you will seek me and will not find me? And where I am, you cannot come. What's he talking about? People are confused. Now, on the last day of the tabernacle, the great day, Jesus stood and cried out, saying, if anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and let him drink. The one who believes in me. Do you see that? Just as the scripture said, and what would the priest would have been doing that morning? They would have walked down to the pool of Siloam, have dipped the water out, and had brought it as a sacrifice, pour out sacrifice in the temple complex. And Jesus is in the temple, and I can see it in my mind's eye. The priest is over there pouring out the sacrifice, the water. And Jesus says, come to me if you're thirsty. Isn't that powerful? And then he says, if anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and let him drink. And the one who believes in me, just as the scripture said, out of his belly will flow rivers of living water. Now he said this concerning the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, whom those who believe in him were about to receive. For the Spirit was not yet given because Jesus had not yet been glorified. He had not been crucified and risen from the dead. Then when they heard these words, some from the crowd began to say, this man is truly the prophet. Others were saying, this is the Mashiach. But others were saying, no, for the Christ does not come from Galilee, does he? Where was Jesus born at, though? Bethlehem. And that is directly from the Old Testament scriptures. Has not the scripture said that Christ comes from the descendants of David and from Bethlehem, the village where David was? So there was a division in the crowd because of Jesus. And some of them were wanting to seize him, but no one laid hands on him. So the officers of the chief priests came, and they said to the Pharisees said, take him. And they said to them, why did you not bring Jesus to us? And the officers replied, never has a man spoken like this. We've never heard anybody. You want me to lay my hands on him? And the officers replied, never has a man spoken like this. Then the Pharisees replied to them, you've not also been deceived, have you? Their mind was made up. There was nothing Jesus could do to change their mind. None of the rulers or the Pharisees have believed in him, have they? But this crowd who does not know the law is accursed. This stupid bunch of people, these people that have just come to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles, that don't really understand the Torah, none of them understand what's going on. They're just all accursed and bewitched by this man filled with a demon. You see that? Y'all, it's 8 o'clock. Have y'all got just a few? Can I take just a few more minutes from you? Is that, if you need to leave, leave. But let me get just a few more minutes because I hate to do the 18 to be continued with this. But look who stood there. Nicodemus, the one in John chapter 3 who met Jesus on a rooftop at night. This is after that event, who met with Jesus. Nicodemus, the one who came to him previously, who was one of them, said to him, our law does not condemn a man unless it first hears from him and knows what he is doing, does it? Makes me think Nicodemus already loved him. They answered and said to him, you're not also from Galilee, are you? Causing immediate dispersion upon the man that would bring any semblance of knowledge among their peers. And they immediately isolate him. What are you, one of him? You get that? They answered and they said, you're not from Galilee, are you? Investigating and seeing that a prophet does not arise from Galilee, and each one went to his own house. They couldn't. So this is all happening at the same time, y'all. You get this? We haven't stopped. This is all that day. But Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. Now, early in the morning, the next day, he came again to the temple courts, still the feast. And all the people were coming, and he sat down and began to teach them. Y'all, they're having a party together. There's no quicker way to get the word out than a million people coming. And every time they go to the booths after they go to the temple, guess what they're talking about? That Jesus guy's here. And they're spreading the news of him throughout all of Jerusalem. And all the people were coming, and he sat down and began to teach them. Now the scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman to him caught in adultery. This is that story. Have you ever connected the fact that Jesus was at the Feast of Tabernacles, and story of the woman caught in adultery and the crowds that were around him. Whenever you see this in your mind's eye, when we grew up in Faulkner Sunday School, how many people were standing around? Not many at all. A few of these Pharisees and a couple other people. There are thousands of people standing around, and they bring this woman caught in adultery before Jesus, and they throw the woman down essentially in front of him, and Jesus says, "He is without sin, cast the first stone." I'm going to stop here tonight. We're going to pick up next week. Well, this building is reserved next week. We'll figure it out. Maybe we'll do it. It's a good weather's good outside, ain't it? Y'all ain't seen the sheep at the farm yet, have you? We might have to come to the farm. Would that be bad?